Elhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin. Esselatu vesselamu ala Resulina Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve ashabihi ve etba'ihi ve sellem. Esselamu aleyküm ve rahmetullah. Inshallah, we will continue with our journey across the creation to find our creator. So this is going to be 7th ray. We have studied third session.
Selamünaleyküm, Yusuf. Sorry for the interruption, but are you sure you are using the right microphone? Just checking.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, this is the wrong microphone. Is the microphone now?
I think it's right now. Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yes, it's much better now. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so the text we have been studying were titled with the observations of a traveler questioning the universe concerning his maker. And this was starting as an interpretation of the verse, the seven heavens and the earth and all that is in them extol and glorify him. And there is nothing but glorifies him with praise. But you understand not their glorifying. Indeed, he is most forbearing, most forgiving. And this was going to be steps. So this is the supreme sign. So our traveler started with the heavens, the skies, and the skies told him about his maker in the first stage. In the second stage, he looked into the atmosphere, the clouds, the winds, rain, and how the air, how they tell him about their maker and his maker. And now we come to the third stage, which is going to be the earth. And I am looking for somebody to read. Tawfiq, do you have a book? You don't. Okay, so let me see if I can pull up a book for you so that we can ask Tawfiq to read. $135. Yeah. Okay. You find him? Yeah. Okay. Yes, starting from 135. Next, the globe addresses that thoughtful traveler. Here is the microphone. Sorry. Hold on. That's probably what's on right now.
The globe addresses that thoughtful traveler, now growing accustomed to his reflective journey. Why are you wandering through the heavens, through space and the sky? Come, I will make known to you what you are seeking. Look at the functions that I perform and read my pages. He looks and sees that the globe, like an ecstatic Mevlevi dervish with its twofold motion, is tracing out around the field of supreme gathering a circle that determines the succession of days, years, and seasons. It is a most magnificent dominical ship loaded with the hundreds of thousands of different forms of food and equipment needed for all animate beings, floating with the utmost equilibrium in the ocean of space and circling the sun. He then looks at the pages of the earth and sees that each page of each of its chapters proclaims the sustainer of the earth in thousands of verses. Being unable to read the whole of it, he looks at the page dealing with the creation and deployment of animate beings in the spring and observes the following. the forms of the countless members of hundreds of thousands of species emerge in the utmost precision from a simple material and are then nurtured in most merciful fashion. Then, in miraculous manner, wings are given to some of the seeds. They take to flight and are thus dispersed. They are most effectively distributed, most carefully fed and nurtured. Countless tasty and delicious forms of food in the most merciful and tender fashion are brought forth from dry clay and from roots, seeds, and drops of liquid that differ little among each other. Every spring, 100,000 kinds of food and equipment are loaded on it from an unseen treasury, as if onto a railway wagon, and are dispatched in utmost orderliness to animate beings. The sendings to infants of canned milk in those food packages and pumps of sugared milk in the form of their mother's affectionate breasts is in particular such an instance of solicitousness, mercy, and wisdom that is immediately establishes itself as a most tender manifestation of the mercy and generosity of the merciful and compassionate one. In short, this living page of spring displays 100,000 examples and samples of supreme gathering, and is a tangible demonstration of this verse. So, look to the signs of God's mercy, how he gives life to the earth after its death. For verily, he it is who gives life to the dead, and he has power over all things. Moreover, this verse may be said to express in miraculous fashion the meanings of the page that is spring. The traveler thus understood that the earth proclaims through it all its pages in fashion proportionate to their size. There is no God but he. An expression of the meaning beheld by the traveler through the brief testimony of one of the 20 aspects of a single page out of the more than 20 pages of the globe, it is said in the third degree of the first station, there is no God but God, the necessary being, to whose necessary existence in unity the earth with all that is in it and upon it testifies, through the testimony of the sublimity of the comprehensiveness of the earth, of subjugation, disposition, nurturing, opening, distribution of seeds, protection, administration, the giving of life to all animate objects, animate beings, compassion and mercy universal and general, a truth vast and perfect and to be observed. Then that reflective traveler.
Okay, let's pause there and let's first discuss this stage. And we'll continue with the next afterwards. So in this one, now the traveler is at the third stage and it is the globe. And the globe said, why are you wandering through the heavens, through the space and the sky? Come and I will make known to you what you are seeing. Look at the functions that I perform and read my pages. Any comments, any questions? Yes. Was he playing with the phone there? Okay. Yes. So, any comments about that or any questions? What does the author do here? How does the journey happen? Any initial comments? Yes. I can extend my.
Would it be that the author is inviting the voyager, the explorer, to read the Earth as a book, and that there are, like, you can read it, like you can read the various pages of the book that is creation on Earth?
Yep. So yeah. So now we are going to look at the book. So one important word that catches my attention here is look at the functions that I perform and read my pages. And he's going to show us regular things, what we would call quote unquote natural. Like, for instance, he says, he looks and sees that the globe, like an ecstatic Mevlevi dervish, with its twofold motion, like around itself and around the sun, is tracing out around the field of the supreme gathering a circle that determines the succession of days, years, and seasons. It's a very interesting sentence. I don't know what that means. Any idea? Like, Earth, like the globe is making a motion around the field of supreme gathering. While you are thinking about that, let me continue with the paragraph. It's a most magnificent dominical ship loaded with hundreds of thousands of different forms of food and equipment needed for all animate beings, floating with the utmost equilibrium in the ocean of space and circling the sun. The Quran uses the term ship, loaded ships. Does anybody remember? We have two Egyptians. No? In Surah Yasin, there should be one verse about multiple verses. No, not Safina. وآية لهم أن حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون. Like we, now that you're Egyptians, yeah, go ahead with the translation. وآية لهم أن حملنا. So it's a sign that indeed we carry you and your ذريتهم, your families, your descendants, in filled up ships. So which ship is this? That the Creator is saying that we carry you and your offsprings in a ship which is filled to the brim. Fulk al-mashhun is like a ship which is filled up. The same word is being used for ship of Nuh alayhi salam as well. Like in some point it's Safina, in another point it's Fulk. So now the author is sort of interpreting this verse, saying that the ship that the verse is referring to is the ship which is the globe of Earth. And it's a ship which is filled up with food. Like if you see those ships, the cruise ships, what do? They start from one place, go to another place, they load food, unload dirt and whatnot, right? The globe of Earth, it's a ship. Nobody is loading food from anywhere. Like it's loaded with food. But as he will say, a wagon comes and loads the food, which is the spring season. So where does this come? How does this happen? So if it was a 5-star vacation that you take with a cruise ship, and you're being served with all different sorts of food and whatnot, you would say, well, maintenance is very nice. Things are being done very clear. Food is quality, everything is nice. But if there are 9,000 guests in that ship, there is 1,000 workers in that ship too. Like a lot of maintenance is happening behind the scenes. So how about this globe of Earth? Do I see it as a ship? Because in the space, it is making this travel in a very specific way. It's a purposeful way. It's not a random, because the way that in its rotation, it is holding a like days. It's not like the cruise ships. They go certain routes meaningfully. They don't randomly stop in locations. They don't stop in the middle of the sea and wait for, I don't know, months. They have a starting point. They have destinations, a final destination. Likewise, this globe is having a meaningful journey. It's being loaded with all different food. Who is the maker? What or who takes care of that? Answer is easy. It happens by itself, right? What do we say? So Oh, Brother Bikan left hand, I believe. Sorry, Brother Bikan, please go ahead. Um, okay, is Brother Bikan there? Okay, it was a mistake. Thank you. Okay, any other comments about the ship? There's an interesting statement in there, if anybody wants to talk about it. It says, the globe is tracing out around the field of the supreme gathering a circle that determines the succession of days, years, and seasons. What does that even mean? Like, supreme gathering means the Hashr. Is Hashr going to happen at the heart of the circle, or what is he talking about here? No. No idea. So, I mean, this author is speaking in very interesting ways, and he's throwing ideas in between the lines. So, what I understand from that sentence is the rotation of the Earth is not meaningless. It's not random. It's not by chance. But why is this ship traveling? Because if it would have been this cruise ship, you would say it's for leisure, and people are getting entertained. What is the point of Earth having this journey? Yeah.
Part of the journey is that the switching between night and day, and years, this method of measurement that it has produced gives us a sense that something is being counted. So there's a weight, like something is going to be weighed out, and there is a total accounting or measurement that is being taken. So things have a beginning and end. So there is something to, I guess, prepare for, that it's not like things are just not continuing without any measurement. So it's giving you a sense that there's something being counted, and that there is since something is being counted, that means there has to be also an end, a moment where it will be measured and take into account what was, whether what was accomplished, or something will be tallied within that time. So it gives you a sense of also the purpose behind it. Like it's a structure. Something is being done with meaning and with intention.
Okay, very, very beautiful, very beautiful. Yes.
It also made me think of cycles and beginnings and endings and intentions. So a lot of what you said, there should be, or there could be, a meaning in the days and the years and the seasons. And I think it covers it a little bit later on, but when it says like it brings life again, so every spring there's more, and it makes me think of with hardship comes ease, like you have the winter, but then the spring comes, and that there's something to be read from there.
Jazakallah khair, very beautiful points. And I'll read Suhail's note here. Suhail says, the ship is traveling towards the great gathering. That is the end of all things and the objective, the purpose. It is the meaning behind all things, the one thing the face of all things looks towards. Yes, so I'll just summarize what I understood from all those comments. if you pay attention carefully, like this travel is happening very precisely. And as Mohammed Sial was pointing out to, like there is somebody who's keeping record of things. Like if you go to a place where bookkeeping is done very carefully, what would you think about it? Very professional, and things are being done with a perfect measure. Things are being taken account to an account. Then you would ask yourself, how about me? Like in this environment, everybody's so careful, and I am invited here. Am I going to be not held into account at some point? On Tuesday, as we are discussing وَسَمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ, when we were talking about يَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ, so the expected, the promised day, you're asking the question on Tuesday, do you feel like you're promised a day? What sort of a promised day is it? But the way we discussed it back then was, for instance, if you put a seed, why do you put the seed in there? Because you expect a plant is going to come out. When you punch the wall is punching back at you. Like this is how the creation is. You burn something, like you put the food on the stove and it keeps cooking. Like there's an action and reaction. You do something, you get a response. This is how the existence is happening. This is our experience. How about my choices? I make a choice. Let's say I go and steal his money, or the creator created something and I don't appreciate it. Am I not going to ask about it? Is nobody going to follow up with that? Like Yawmil Maw'ud, I am expecting that somebody will come after me. The way the rest of the creation is happening, it looks like for my choices, if I steal from this guy, somebody will come and say that, why did you steal his money? So I expect this. Likewise here, the way that the existence is done in perfect measure, it tells me something. It says that, Yusuf, what you are doing, you're also going to be held accountable about this. So this purposeful rotation tells that things are being done very purposefully in a perfect measure, and you are no exception. You are going to be held accountable. So by just looking at how the creation is happening, actually, we then are able to conclude that there is going to be a supreme gathering. We are going to be held accountable. Yes.
So I'm trying to understand the significance of the imagery that he's drawing out. So, I mean, is he saying that like it's a circle around the supreme gathering? Or is it like a spiral? Because if it's a circle, then like I couldn't make the connection between if you're just going around something, you never get to that point in the middle. So is it more like a spiral or I guess and what is the twofold motion? Like what is the significance? I can connect the significance of change of the succession of days, of years, of seasons to that endpoint of a gathering place, right? I can connect the constancy in creation, the transience in creation, the impermanence, the decay that I witness to the idea that, oh, I'm going to be gathered just as things are being gathered. But I was just wondering if there's a specific significance he's trying to make here through this notion of a circle or twofold motion. Like I couldn't get what imagery he wants me to understand here.
My take with this metaphorical language, to me, this is a metaphorical language, and as if it is saying that the days and years is really drawing the boundaries of your resurrection. Like this is what you're going to be held accountable of. This is going to be like, since it's making a circle, as if whatever you do is going inside this circle. In another place, he uses a similar wording as with this too. Normally, what do I say? If I go and steal him, it's gone. Nobody's going to follow me. But if the imagery he draws here is your days and nights and years, whatever you do is not getting lost. It is getting accumulated in this circle that this is drawing, and you are going to be held accountable, whatever is now gathered throughout your life in this circle. So this is what you will bring with yourself to the day of judgment, to your resurrection. Yeah. So, and it's also interesting why he brought up Mevlevi dervishes, because like Nursi is carefully choosing words. It's not simply poetic, but the rotation of Mevlevis is like they also turn around themselves, and there's going to be a sheikh at the center, and then they're also turning around the sheikh in the way they do their I don't know if you would call it dance or however you would like to name it. It says the earth does something similar. Like there's this turning around itself, and it's turning around the sun. So in my personal journey, what sort of a journey I'm going to have, because earth is doing something as such, but it's going to have some meaning as it looks to me. In our journey, we are having a self-introspective journey by using ourselves to get to know the Creator. And also we turn around the existence and learn about the Creator. Like tafakkur enfusi, within the self, you make tafakkur, get to know yourself. Through getting to know yourself, you know your Creator. And then you make tafakkur afaq, within the creation, you make another, as we are right now doing, with taking a journey with this traveler. So with that journey also, you get to know your Creator. So these are the things that I think the author is alluding to by that. And yeah. Okay. Yes, so he said, we talked about the food and equipment needed for all animate beings floating with the utmost equilibrium in the ocean of space and circling the sun. Actually, that verse that I was referring to from Surah Yasin, so in Surah Yasin, when the Creator talks about creation of day and night, like how does it go? It's first وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ الْأَرْضُ الْمَيْتَةُ. So how from the dead earth he creates life. This is the first verse. So one after the other, there are three signs in Surah Yasin, the third page of Surah Yasin, that are being mentioned. One is in the creation of, or the resurrection of the earth after its death. The second one is in the creation of day and night. And the third one is in the creation of ships filled up with في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون, and another one like this, which are carrying you. وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون. If we were to drown you, nobody would be there to save you, to give you. Nobody is going to be able to save you from that. إِلَّا رَحْمَةً مِنَّا وَمَتَعًا إِلَى حِينٍ, except our mercy and a time given to you. So it is very beautifully, if we, the way now we read, the author demonstrates it. Your life is this ship. Your personal life is a ship. The globe is a ship. And all these ships, how does it float? Right? Actually, once a brother, he had a house by the Bosphorus, and like it was seeing the sea, and some friend of his came from like the village, and now he is just trying to start the conversation about the Creator and whatnot. So a large load ship was going there, and he said, look how the Creator is lifting the ships. No, it's not. It's the buoyancy. The buoyancy of the water is lifting the ship up. Actually, since we see its buoyancy of water that lifts the ship, likewise we say, oh, in the space, of course, like where should the Earth go? There's no up, there's no down. Of course, it just stays there. I mean, it's natural. It's how else would you like it to be? And in your personal life, we say, well, I mean, why shall I die? I mean, there's air, there's water. Of course, I will live. Like it sounds as if it is natural that it's going to happen. But when it comes to the buoyancy of this cruise ship, we take it normal. But how the cruise ship is functioning, we admire the management company. We don't take it normal. Then which we should make question, like the functioning of the cruise ship. Yeah, a lot of maintenance needs to be done, and it's being done. How about the lifting of the ship itself? How about the globe of Earth? And where does the food for this one is coming from? Who is loading the food? We say, well, in the spring, just new plants come out. Where do they come from? Like, how do they come? And let's continue with this. He then looks at the pages of the Earth and sees that each page of each of its chapters proclaims the sustainer of the Earth in thousands of verses. Being unable to read the whole of it, he looks at the page dealing with the creation and deployment of animate beings in the spring and observes the following. Let's see how the food is being loaded to this ship. The forms of the countless members of hundreds of thousands of species emerge in the utmost precision from a simple material and are then nurtured in most merciful fashion. Then in miraculous manner, wings are given to some of the seeds. They take to flight and are thus dispersed. They are most effectively distributed, most carefully fed and nurtured. Countless tasty and delicious forms of food in the most merciful and tender fashion are brought forth from dry clay and from roots, seeds, and drops of liquid that differ little among each other. Every spring, 100,000 kinds of food and equipment are loaded on it from an unseen treasury, as if onto a railway wagon, and are dispatched in utmost orderliness to animate beings. Descending to infants of canned milk in those food packages, and pumps of sugared milk in the form of their mothers' affectionate breasts, is in particular such an instance of solicitousness, mercy, and wisdom that it immediately establishes itself as a most tender manifestation of the mercy and generosity of the merciful and compassionate one. Brother Bikram raised hand again. I don't know if this is intentional this time or not.
This is intentional.
Okay, please.
So I would love to talk about it myself, but it's difficult for me. I apologize. So I need to pose it as a question. Can we expand on what does author really mean when he refers to page of a book, like seeing a creation as a book? We talked about that before, but since this is the one of the main chapters that sees the creation as a book, maybe we should spend some time expanding it. Is it just a metaphor, or is it beyond the metaphor?
Okay, so the question is, how to see the existence as a book, and what are the pages of this book? How do we read that? Is that right, Brother Bikram?
Well, yes, this is right. And also, like when author says that, is he just using a metaphor just to teach us something, or is it really seeing the creation like a book?
Okay. Yes, seeing the creation as a book. What do you think about that, people? Any comments?
I guess we have seen this before and we have talked about this before on how you need to, whenever you see these things like, oh, the earth is floating, and you just come up with an explanation, or it's the gravitational force, you need to see its connection to its creator. And just how you gave the example of like how a cruise ship floating, you say, oh, it's the buoyancy of water, but it's management. You say, oh, it's the management team and that they're doing this. So I feel like reading it as a book is trying to use the same logic on how like, oh, how is this cruise ship operating, and look at all these things that the traveler and this the traveler that Imam Nursi is mentioning is seeing, and how even in the things that we take for granted or just say, oh, these are natural things, we need to take a closer look and see how how the how the creator is manifested in these things, and how there's a certain order and how there's a certain measure and all of these things.
Yeah, I think in this passage especially, there's this emphasis on rububiyah, on dominicality. I mean, it says dominical-ship, right? Of lordship, of the one who sustains. And it's saying, okay, the pages proclaim the sustainer, but also kind of giving examples of how that sustainership, the quality of sustainership, is being manifested through various things, right? So from the emergence of different species, or the very interesting logistics of a leaf or of a seed that surpass like all the logistics of FedEx and USPS and all that we see. But there's also this, as it says, careful distribution, nurturing, feeding taking place. So how I'm going to connect it to pages is that I see this quality of sustainership being manifesting within creation, and part of sustainership is also like educatorship as well, right? My Rabb is one who sustains, who nurtures, who educates. And so the more I recognize, the more I witness that quality of sustainership in creation, the more I can see that, okay, the one who is sustaining all of this, the one who is manifesting this order, as the brother said, manifesting this, it used the word, this nurturance or tarbiyah, right, upon creation, must also be the one who must educate me in my life as well, right? So when I situate my existence in the context of an education, then it becomes also much easier to see that, oh, like this moment in my life is a sentence, right? Or this day in my life is a page. This tree, this whatever I'm witnessing, these flowers, this food is a dot, is a letter, is a sentence within that larger education that I'm taking, that I've been placed into. So then once I start to see whatever I encounter, whether it's like, I'm in the elevator with someone, like even I mentioned that because like these mundane parts, what we deem as mundane parts of our day, once I start to take them seriously as parts of that book, right, in which creation is that book, then everything gains this meaningfulness in which I have to be very careful in whatever I might encounter, right? I have a conversation with someone, I'm like, oh, this is a brand new sentence. Like, how do I read it? This is a sentence being sent from my creator. I'm bored, I'm frustrated, I'm stressed. Oh, a new page has been delivered, right? The humidity, the sun is beating down on me today in the 105 degrees heat wave, right? How do I read this specific page of creation as well? So I guess contextualizing both what I witnessed, the creation in front of me, and also the creation happening within me, in terms of an education, then I can really see how everything that I encounter in my life is, you know, pages of a book or parts of a speech or something, some dialogue that is being given to me so that I engage with it, so that I respond to it. But that's kind of what came to my mind, at least through this emphasis it seems to have on Rabb or Rububiyyah.
Yeah, when as you're passing the microphone there, I'll just read Brother Birkan's comment. Brother Birkan's is saying that book is equal to a story which has a coherence. There are purpose of word choices, willful insertion of characters. There must exist a reader. There would exist an author. This is what the book connotates. And now when we look at the universe, do we observe a story? Do we observe, like as he was mentioning, we are looking at the globe of Earth as a book. So do we observe a story, a coherence, a purpose of word choices? What are the words? Who is the reader here? Who is the author here? And he also says, before seeing the story characters, we cannot directly jump to the author. Like we first need to see the characters in the story. We need to see who the reader is. Then we will get to the author, which is the creator, says Brother Birkan. Yes, Dua.
I was just going to say I really like comparing the earth to like a book, because it makes me think of how I treat an actual book and how I treat the earth in a different manner. So for example, like when I'm reading a book, sometimes like when you read a classic novel, there are a lot of details in them, you know, like a lot about, oh, you know, like this is what the place looked like. This is what the Victorian market looked like, you know, and or like even when I'm watching a movie, sometimes when I watch a movie with people, they want to skip the boring stuff, you know. They're like, oh, you know, like this is just a song, like we can skip this, or you know, like this is just the setting, it's fine, we can skip this. And I hate it when they do that, because I'm like, listen, you know, the director made this movie intentionally, right? If a scene is in there, if a setting is in there, even if you don't think it's important, like it's adding to the narrative of the story, and if you truly want to do justice to that movie or that experience, you have to go through the whole thing. That is how you will, you know, like understand the complete narrative and get everything that you can from there. But now I'm thinking, you know, do I treat the earth this way? And I don't, because there is so much that happens, you know, that I sometimes ignore. Sometimes I'm walking from the CA to my home, for example, and it's beautiful, you know, like the trees are, you know, like waving, dancing, whatever. And I'm just listening to music and completely lost in thoughts, and I'm missing it all. I'm missing the narrative. So it's less about, you know, like whether or not I see it as a story, but definitely I don't treat it like I, you know, I don't give it the respect that I give to an art piece or a movie or even a book. So.
Yes, exactly. Yes, another comment.
I just want to add one more thing there. In that even like the analogy of a book can have its limits, right? In that, like, this isn't just written and you know, the author is resting and just checking out my reaction. Like, it's a speech. It's a dynamic speech in which a dialogue is like someone is speaking to me through the leaves dancing or through me getting lost even in my thoughts, right? Because that's also being created for me. So there's a speech that is actively being spoken to me, and I can either respond to it or ignore it. I mean, a book is useful, but it's also like it's a speech. It's living, it's dynamic, it's close, it's happening right now, rather than a book that's just distant or far away. But obviously, it's very useful in its own.
I really liked that point about also like taking into consideration the fact that it is like an active dynamic speech, because one thing that I guess I've been trying to do on like say my walk to work is try to like take in everything as much as possible, like the details. And then I find myself just getting overwhelmed by like everything around me. Like, how does, I don't know, this speck of like gravel on the ground like have meaning? How do I read like this like little flower over here? like the way the clouds are moving at this specific moment, like I can maybe come to the conclusion that there is a meaning and a wisdom behind the patterns, but I find myself kind of frustrated because I can't, I guess, like read all of it all at once. And so I guess this paragraph about that says being unable to read the whole of it, he looks at the page dealing with the creation and deployment of animate beings in the spring. So I guess looking at, I guess, specific pages at a time and like knowing that, you know, just because I can't grasp all of it doesn't mean that there isn't something that my creator is urging me to like pay attention to. And that, you know, maybe I'm not supposed to get all of it at the same time. Like it's not a giant textbook where I have to memorize like all the little details all at once, but there's like a main theme, and like maybe something that is directing my attention like more than something else. So I guess seeing it like that has helped a lot, I guess.
This is a good point, because what's happening is sometimes we get intimidated. Like somebody says, well, the universe is a book and everything that's happening is a meaningful message from your creator. And then exactly the point that you mentioned is being highlighted. Well, how about those tiny things? Am I going to understand everything? And with this, actually, what we are trying to say, or what my ego sometimes want to say is, well, let's forget about it altogether and go back to my previous life. So the textbook, if it's a book, then I get intimidated. It's too hard to understand the whole thing. It's too thick of a book. Just read the first chapter, read the first page, whatever you can get, because it's gradual. Like you will read a few pages, you will get used to the style of the book. You will understand the next chapters better. But but the bottom line is it's a book. It's a meaningful message. So take it as such, and you will start reading and understanding eventually. Very beautiful. There was another note that was for the past part, but since Suhail have written it, I would like to read that. This was about the previous portion. In the beginning is the end of the thing, that is, as something comes to be, do I see its end, and thus the great gathering. Everything is a closed loop. Time per se is not a long drawn out string with no beginning nor end. All is a closed loop, and within it is the great gathering. Day and night is circular, as are the years and seasons. So this was about the previous part relating to this supreme gathering. So there has happened some sentences in there, but since we don't have, there are two. Somebody else needs to raise the questions about that. So, and we have people studying in biology here and whatnot, but the author is talking about, I don't know if he's speaking too simplistic or he is speaking the truth. Let's judge it together. So, for example, he says, wings are given to some of the seeds. What is special about that? Like, these are the very thing that you just puff when you're a child, you enjoy it, and it just goes away. Like, what is special about those seeds?
So it did fascinate me when this was being read, because so I thought of the seeds, how the seeds go, the pollen goes, and some of it just travels by air. So I thought the author could have meant just that the seeds are given wings, and then they go to other plants, the germ, whatever happens, and ultimately we get fruits, and how all of this is carefully orchestrated. But I also thought of like bees in general, because they have actual wings, and then they're responsible for majority of the pollination, if not all of it. And I love how it's like the author started from such a big page of the universe, the globe, and how slowly dissecting everything, he ultimately reached essentially a tiny little cell, and how even that has an order in it, and there is a sustainer that's taking it to the right destination so that we can ultimately get the fruit out of that tiny little seed.
Actually, this text is important in the sense that it teaches us how to read universe in the name of God. Like what he's explaining in here, let's try to read it from the way that we get used to. We say that, oh, this plant is able to survive because randomly it ended up getting wings. Like let's compare our way of regular reading, how we study it. Like the reason I said Derartu is if Derartu was here, she would have raised the question. I mean, she's the courageous one. Otherwise, everybody has the same question, but she's courageously asking the question. Well, I mean, this plant survived so far because it had those wings. Like it being right now alive or able to produce is because it had wings somehow. Not the other way around. But the author is saying, no, it is given those wings. So what do you think about that? Which way of thinking makes sense or makes more sense? Is the author just being very naive and simplistic here? And our scientific mindset is saying that, of course, if it didn't have those wings, it would have been eliminated, like naturally selected out. It's not selected out because it had wings. This is how it survived, because it was fit. Okay, question was confusing. So let's say the author is talking about now in the spring, a wagon comes and foods are delivered, another example that he gives. But I would say, no, they are not explicitly being sent. I wouldn't be alive if plants wouldn't be coming. It's not that somebody is explicitly sending the food. If, like, isn't this how the evolutionary narrative talking about? It's saying that the ones survived and then changed a little bit and survived. It's not that somebody is creating it in this way, in this purposeful way. It's the other way around. If it was not like this, it wouldn't survive and die away. Like its existence is not being given any cause. Its existence is just happens to be. Its death is being given a cause. It would have died otherwise. Since it's alive, therefore, things worked in its favor. But author is taking a different approach. What does your atheist friend say? No?
No.
Okay. Okay.
So just going off of this approach, like I've thought about this before and just wanted to share this, that there are so many things in life that we take for granted. And it never occurs to you that you are being sustained in that sense. That it's a feel-good story that I read online, that there was an old man and he fainted, so he was taken to the hospital. And in the hospital, they put him on oxygen. He was in the ICU and he recovered. And the next day they gave him his medical bill and it said, oh, this much for the oxygen you used. And the man started crying and thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I just used it for this many hours and you're charging me this much money, but there's someone who has been providing that for my whole life and I never gave it a second thought. And in that same way, I feel like sometimes we take all of these things for granted, just to go off track a bit, like, oh, like my cells are dividing in me, like, because it's natural, they divide and they like do everything perfectly. And like, I feel like Allah has like given us signs that make us see that, you know what, like, no, that's not the case. If you have cancer, they'll divide wrong. If you have sickle cell, you won't absorb the oxygen that well. And we take all of these things for granted. And I feel like that's what the author is doing. Like, we try to, like, it doesn't even cross our minds to think about these things, maybe slightly more, and see how, like, it's not a given. You're being sustained actively with all of these things.
I just wanted to add to that. Because like I realized like a week ago or something, I came across like a video of like how to check whether or not you have a deviated septum. So I was like trying to like see like if I can breathe through both nostrils or whatever. And after that, like even though I was like, when you become conscious of your breathing, it's so hard to breathe, it's and I was just thinking about it, how when I am the one who's supposed to do it, breathing is so difficult, like manually breathing is so difficult, but I do it like all the time, and I'm not doing it myself, it's happening automatically. And then it's so easy, like I don't even take note of it, but when I am the one who's responsible for it and when I make it like my task, it's so difficult. So I just thought that was very beautiful. So
You know, maybe it was the week before too. I'm gonna rat some people out, but there was some comments of like, yeah, I was just like, yeah, like why are we reading this text? Like, what's the point of it? What are we getting out of it? Is this kind of like a rehash of just things that we already know? Okay, yeah, there's the creator, it's order, wisdom, all this, we know that. But I guess here, as the comments have said, like, because I was also thinking this of like, like in my own dialogue with my many other voices. Okay, like let's say the seed, naturally developed that way, or it was created that way by God. Like, okay, like all right, how does that help me solve my problems, right? Because tomorrow I will wake up and I will have my problems, and I'm not going to interact with the seed really. But how I interpret or how I read, as the text says, right? How I read this seed, whether if I see it as something that just developed because that's just the way it is to survive, I'm sure the scientists in the room can put the jargon much nicer. Then similarly, I will interpret, I will read anything that happens within my own life as things that just happen to be, right? And I'm the victim in them usually, right? In my story. Whereas if I see that those wings were given intentionally by one who is manifesting his qualities of mercy, of sustainership, of compassion, of knowledge, of wisdom, all these infinite qualities that you can detect of again, to me, logistics, like it's quite amazing in that sense. If I can read that and see that it is intentionally, it must be intentionally done so, then that also then allows me to recognize how the necessity of how everything in my life is also being intentionally chosen, intentionally placed, intentionally created. And so yeah, I guess the seed or the produce that comes in wagons, right, as Nursey says, like it speaks for itself if I allow it the chance, the opportunity to speak in terms of why are you in this way or how have you come to be in this way, then it tells me straight off the bat that there is an intentionality there, right? As the brother was saying, there is a choice there that is being actively made every single moment. And that choice is also being manifested in my life at every single moment. So that whenever I am going through something, I can say, this is a intentional choice of mercy, of wisdom that is being manifested in my life. How can I respond to it? How can I interact with it? How can I be an active witness to it? And I think to me that underscores how important closely reading this text is then in trying to cultivate and sharpen that understanding and method of reading.
When there's a comment.
Just one last thing, like so many more things are coming to my mind as I'm like utilizing this way that Imam Nursi says that you should read the creation. And I feel like if you just look at yourself, like there are so many things happening in our body at like instantaneously that you can keep on writing these books and you can never stop because they're happening at each and every scale, at a small scale, at a larger scale. And just like Imam Nursi started with the earth and dialed it all the way down to pollen, it's the same thing. Like another thing that we take for granted, like silly example, but if you get cut, oh, it'll like close up automatically. If you get a cut on your hand, it gets closed up. If scab forms, something happens, it heals away. But in that very moment, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of cells that are being directed to go to that place and close it up. And then again, I feel like these diseases, there are so many things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left in the creation for us to see that this is not given. This is not a thing that everyone will have. This is being done actively. So if someone has a disease where the blood doesn't clot, they'll keep on bleeding until they die, unless it's managed medically, how we try. And it's not easy to do that. But this is quote unquote given to us for free. And we take it for granted. I feel like this way of reading the creation will just make you more aware of how there's a measure in every minute thing that exists.
And the bigger question then that I need to ask is, as long as there's this deliberate, measured choice being made, then there must be someone who makes this choice. But what do we attribute this to? Like in our normal understanding, when we don't read this book as such, or not, we are not even taking it as a book, to whom do we attribute this? Like, for example, when it comes to blood, what do we say? Just blood gets clotted. I don't know the proper term. So it just happens by itself. This is what we are saying, actually. The language we use is implying it happens by itself. What does it mean it happens by itself? Like I see a pie, I see a biryani here, and I say, well, it happened by itself. This is what it sounds like, practically speaking. Like ingredients were there and it just happened to become biryani. Sounds very silly, but this is how we tend to say it, by just putting some jargon. I mean, to me, if you put some Urdu word, since it's biryani, it would sound scientific in this case. Like, since I am alien to scientific jargon, it sounds very cool and like belief worthy. If you were to say, well, it just happened to become biryani, because this is what it means, it happened by itself. Or even we say it rains, just very simple, it rains. The language itself is as if insinuating that it rains by itself. And somebody brought me gift, I say, well, gift came, for example. If I say simply, I say gift came. What does this mean? Well, did it walk by itself? I mean, this is the meaning that's being induced, right? When I say it rains, even if I'm going to be happy and thankful for it, to whom do I thank? To the rain itself, apparently, because this is the only active agent in this sentence. But this needs to be replaced in our perception. At least we should be careful to understand what is going on and what the author is trying to wake us up from, and reading the universe as a book rather than taking it for granted. And taking it for granted generally happens by the words, it happens by itself, it's natural, it's a natural phenomena. There's a law that governs it. In this case, it's the law becomes the agent, as buoyancy of water. Like we said, what carries the ship? Buoyancy of water. It's a law. Like law is the active agent in this case. So I say, who hanged Qadir? Let's imagine somebody hanged Qadir. And then we say, well, I don't know, some law number 17 hanged Qadir. Like according to law, somebody did something. But I say, no, law 17 had hanged him. So this is the jargon that we use. And since we use it for so long, we just take it for granted. We don't really understand what we are saying. And by this language, like the author is, for example, saying, they are brought forth from dry clay and from roots, seeds, and drops of liquid that differ little among each other. Like different seeds, and their material, like 2-3 milligrams of this or whatever that, or if you would like to take it to the genetic basis of it, since people in this room know genetics more than like milligrams. Let's say this much of this bases, that much of that bases, still 4 or 5 same bases, but like in terms of material, a little bit more, a little bit less. And this one is a, I don't know, tomato. The other one is a cucumber. The other one is, I don't know, very super hot, spicy pepper that Kadir eats. So how come this much variety is happening from them? Because it's the same thing. When it comes to this though, we say, well, it's a genetic code. It's a meaningful inscription. Who understands this? Like if now I start taking it as a book, now my scientific lens changes a little bit. Then I start becoming serious. I say, now it's a meaningful text. If you say a meaningful text, then you need to say somebody who is interpreting it. Who is the interpreter here? Another unconscious being. Then things are getting upside down, because half of it comes to a point that I cannot deny the conscious measured making. So I say it's a meaningful code, a genetic code. But then if it's a meaningful code, then you need a conscious interpreter to make sense of it. And then you say, well, it's an unconscious being who is interpreting it. So things are getting all messed up again. So we need to be reading it properly in this case. What do I understand from here? Or very interestingly, again, he raises the point of milk. Like milk is, the baby is in need of food, but also baby is in need of mercy. So milk is put in a way that baby is going to be hugged when being fed. It could have been like the milk could have been done with this finger. The creator didn't put it in fingertips. It's going to be more convenient maybe. Just put it to the baby and baby gets fed. But the creator put it in a way that the baby is being hugged, the mercy, because the baby is in mercy as well, as much as baby is in need of milk. And this white, beautiful liquid is being given along with the mercy. So you say, whomever did this just didn't do it randomly. Because at the end of the day, it's a piece of meat. Like the mechanism that the milk is being produced, it could have been just in the lap of the hand, and then some channels. It would be nice and convenient, right? So that shows that the creator of the need of mercy in this fragile creature is the one who is the creator of the milk, and he serves them together. This is what I observe here. And it's not a making of those cells, those milk cells, whatever cells they are. I cannot attribute creation of milk to milk cells because it comes with mercy. Like if I say, okay, milk cells make silk, who makes milk cells make milk, then who makes mercy? Because they come together. So this is why author in there is showing us them together, saying descending to infants of canned milk in those food packages and pumps of sugared milk in the form of their mother's affectionate breasts is in particular such an instance of solicitousness, mercy, and wisdom that it immediately establishes itself as a most tender manifestation of the mercy and generosity of the merciful and compassionate one. In short, this living page of spring displays 100,000 examples and samples of the supreme gathering and is a tangible demonstration of this verse. It's a tangible demonstration of this verse. Which verse? فانظر إلى آثار رحمة الله كيف يحيي الأرض بعد موتها إن ذلك لمحيي الموتى وهو على كل شيء قدير. So look to the signs of God's mercy, how he gives life to the earth after its death. For verily he it is who gives life to the dead, and he has power over all things. This verse is teaching us how to see resurrection. So look at the signs of God's mercy, how he gives life to the earth after its death. Like in the winter, things seem to be dead. All the flies, all the mosquitoes, these annoying creatures, it looks like they are done. In spring, they come back. Like, where did you go? Where did you come from? The trees, they were gone, they come back. So these are all signs of mercy, God's mercifully creating things. It should tell me something. It says, for verily he it is who gives life to the dead. So you will be resurrected like this too. So Quran is not simply saying, so it's not simply like, since Quran says there's going to be afterlife, I believe in afterlife. Quran is saying, this is how I will resurrect you. Just look at the examples. This is what I kept doing. I'll do it once more. So it's not that you haven't observed the resurrection at all. We keep observing the resurrection again and again. So if you keep seeing us cooking beans all Friday, and next week, are these guys going to be able to cook us beans? I mean, nobody will just even think about it. They would say, well, it's the easiest thing for them to cook beans. That's why they keep cooking beans for us. Another week, yeah, they will definitely cook beans again. Creator keeps creating resurrection in front of our eyes. And I say, well, is he going to be able to create me again after I die and they bury me under the soil? We keep burying those seeds, and he resurrects them every spring. So, any other comments? Moreover, this verse may be said to express in miraculous fashion the meanings of the page that is spring. The traveler thus understood that the earth proclaims through all its pages in fashion proportionate to their size, La ilaha illa hu. There is no God but he. Yes, so we have 10 minutes.
We have a question here.
Okay, we have a minutes. You?
I was just thinking because I mean the author is from Turkey, so there are like 4 seasons in the year, like the whole region. But what if someone lives in a place where there's only like 1 or 2 seasons, they don't have spring, they won't read this verse this way. Like, also for someone who knows a little about like farming and stuff, I mean, we don't, yes, a lot of things die in the winter, but if at the deeper level, they are not dead, like they are responding to, the plants are responding to everything that's happening around them. Yeah, but I was just thinking, like, I don't know, like, I feel like, I like when I think about resurrection, I would think about it the way you said, when like, the plant matures, the seeds, when you look at them, are dead, and then you plant them again and they are resurrected. So from a plant life cycle, I could see that death and resurrection again, but I wouldn't always link it to the winter and spring, like the seasons in the year, because it's just because it might apply to someone who lives in a 4-season geographical region, but not everywhere. Yeah.
So I mean, we say that trees are not dying because we don't call it a death, right? In the winter, we say they're just sleeping, sort of. But when it comes to putting Qadir into grave, we don't call it sleeping. But why? It's just our perception, right? Because we feel like we cannot interact with him after we put him into the grave. But his mom will keep seeing him in her dream. And for this one, we will imagine she is just entertaining some idea about his son. It's not Qadir somehow interacting with his mom, right? Why not? Like, have you seen your grandmother? Did she pass away? Grandfather? Like, have you seen her in your dream? Probably at some point. Or some dead people, right? So we tend to see people in our dreams, for instance, but we don't take it as I am talking to that person somehow. Why? Because I have a like dogma saying that no, he's gone. I'm just imagining or remembering him sort of. But if you were born today, let's say you were born in this age, but today you haven't seen winter at all. You see summer, nice, beautiful, and then in the fall, leaves start falling. You will get into depression for sure. You're saying that, oh, it was so beautiful, why it is dying. And in the spring, it starts getting alive again. Then you would say, oh, it died really, and now it's coming. Because for the first time you see it in your life. And then for you, it's going to be a true resurrection. But as we kept seeing it and whatnot, we say, well, it didn't really die. We don't call it dying, it's just sleeping. When it comes to putting Kadir into grave, we don't call it sleeping, we call it death because of our own restrictions. This is how we would like to imagine it to be. But if I take it as such, no, this is a resurrection. This is a sort of resurrection. And actually, my resurrection is not going to be maybe any different than this one. Because the way prophetic tradition is explaining us grave is just another life. It's a grave life. It's not death, right? The way it's happening is you are living a life, then you have a grave life, and you have an afterlife. There's not even a cut in between. It's just transition. Pretty much like how it is happening with the trees. But our materialist worldview that is taking over ourselves says, no, human dying is different than trees sleeping. So I think it's just a matter of perspective. When it comes to like seasons, 4 seasons, 2 seasons, I guess some sort of season, everybody is aware of them to whatever extent. But yeah, I mean, 4 seasons and 2 seasons.
Trees that survive one season. Palm trees, they make it the whole season, but they can see it eventually, even with the 2 seasons.
So
And we experience it in both like seasons and creation, but also like, oh, like your friendship dies, and then 5 years later it gets rekindled, like it's given life again, right? The sense of something being given death and then given life and then death. Like we see manifestations of it all on different levels, all in different forms every day in one sense. What's that?
Your teeth falling.
They don't come again.
And Brother Birkan, I saw your hand at some point. It looks like it was a mistake. Brother Birkan, no? Okay. Yes. Okay, yes, Brother Birkan. You cannot unmute. Okay. Oh, ask to unmute. Now you should be able to.
Yes, just Jazakallah khairan. By the way, it happened before as well. Like when I tried to unmute, it says host disabled. The people unmuting themselves, something like that.
Precaution against people. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. With these 4 season stuff, like just one example came to my mind, a very short one. I think it was last week. You gave an example, or maybe the week before, about the Niagara Falls. And then I would say, how dare you can give such an example, because there are people who never sees Niagara Falls, right? It's funny, of course. So you're just giving an example that something that you saw. It doesn't mean that, you have to see Niagara Falls to understand what you mean, or to understand what God is, whatever. It's the same way, the 4 season, what author says, if you are living in Alaska and just see the snow and nothing more. Of course, Alaska is not that way, just exaggerating. But you would give the example from different kinds of snows, for instance, right? So it really doesn't matter, just whatever in your life. So that's the part we should be taking. And this is important and more than just a joke, because this is the methodology of Sahaba, the companions. They read Quran in the light of what is happening in their life. So the Quran was interpreting what happening in their life, the specific examples that they encountered. So the author is doing the same thing. He's reading Quran, as you said at the beginning, Yusuf, interpreting some verses with respect to what? By comparing, or in the light of what? The specific things that he experiences. Not that he's making up some generic things that everybody could understand and so on and so forth. We should do the same thing. Whatever we experience, very specific things, we should try to understand Quran within this light. This is the opposite of this the most stupid thing in the life we've been taught about, trying to be generic, objective, the get rid of everything about yourself out. So this is the opposite of this. What you have in your life, this is the most important, and try to understand that. Read these. This is what it means, reading the universe as a book written for you, that you are reading. You have to mention 3 seasons if you have 3 seasons in your region, or 5 seasons if you have 5 seasons. So this is really, really important. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khairan. Yes. And that was also important, just as a closing remark. Today, at Drexel, we were discussing depiction of Jannah in Quran. There are many examples. Also in prophetic tradition, Jannah is being explained, yet Prophet says, whatever you think is not Jannah. Like, he describes it, then he says, whatever you think about Jannah is not Jannah, which puts us in a different condition. If it's not going to be what I think, yet you're like what is happening in this case, which means I should be reading them as guidance for me, rather than the description of the thing itself. It's a guidance for me to become a customer, if you like, to get there. It should be making sense to me as such. Otherwise, it's not description, literal description of, as Kadir was asking, so how is our day in Jannah is going to be? Like, wake up at 5 and had a good breakfast, and then like this is not the point of description. The description is a guidance for you here and now. Likewise, the same thing applies for the prophetic stories. Is the purpose of prophetic stories to explain me how this historical event exactly happened, or the point is to give me guidance? So, and in this case, I need to put myself at the center and see how it relates to me. Because the one who is narrating that story in there is telling me what I need to hear, the portion of the story that relates to me. This is why you will see that Quran is omitting many details of the stories, because it's not relevant to me. The point is not to hear a story. The point is to find guidance. And if I read it with this mindset, I will start benefiting from the stories, or the example of seasons here. So let's conclude here. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.